So our last, but certainly not least, presenter is Shirazi Khan, and she has over 15 years experience in intellectual property with a focus on trademark clearance, trademark registration, trademark enforcement and protection, copyright protection, and portfolio management. She volunteers as the co-chair of the State Bar of Texas Trademark Committee and volunteers as a mentor to aspiring legal professions at the University of Houston Law Center and various community organizations. So thank you so much for joining us, Shirazi. Let's give her a big round of applause. Thank you.
Hello. Good afternoon, almost. I know I'm between you and lunch, so I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. My name is Shirazi, and I'm here to talk about trademarks. Um, so, how many of y'all have been told you should trademark something, or hey, get that trademark? Yeah. How many of y'all think you have one or more trademarks or have a logo you want to trademark? Cool. I want you to write that down as you listen to this and see how much of this applies to you. And then talk to me later if you have questions. Cool. So, what is a trademark? It's basically a source identifier. It's your brand. It's what tells people where your service is coming from. So you had somebody who was asking, how do I protect to a company, how do I protect somebody from copying what I do? But one way you protect it is because you are the source of this good tour, and your consumers know you are whom they need to go to get this sort of service. So a trademark tells your consumer where their goods or their services come from. So a trademark can also be a service mark. So you've probably heard the term a service mark. A service mark refers to a service brand, whereas a trademark refers to a good. But generally, when we are talking about trademarks, we are talking both about trademarks and service marks. So for this presentation, I'm just going to use the term trademarks. Um, but then you also heard Carolyn talk about trade dress. Trade dress is also a source identifier. It is the commercial look and feel and image that your company will have. And we use the same trademark application process to register a trade dress as well. So the shape of the Coca-Cola bottle, you know that's a Birkin when you see one, even though there's no logo or brand name on it. The Apple Store, the way they laid out the way the Apple Store is a trade dress. So they have the protection for how they do that. So the look and feel of something, right? So what can be a trademark? A lot of things can be trademarks. Your words, the name of your company, the name of your goods, the brand can be a trademark. Numbers can be trademarks. So the word Apple for computers and phones. 504 for jeans. When you see the 504, you know it's a Levi's trademark. Symbols, designs, logos can be trademarked. The Nike swish. Your slogan or your tagline, your catchphrase, the tagline that your consumers associate with your brand or your service is a trademark. And so can your name, right? Your full name, if you're providing a service under your name, that can be your trademark. However, there's a small caveat there. It can't be just your surname, because that would be considered merely a surname and refused registration or protection. So, in addition to those traditional trademarks we see every day, there are certain other things that can be registered and protected as a trademark. A color can be trademarked as something that gives a source identification. We've seen the red sole shoes. We know that it's a particular brand of shoes. We've seen the UPS truck, right? The UPS Brown is trademarked for their services. We know when we hear the NBC chimes that it belongs to the NBC. You don't have to see the logo, you just hear the sound and you know it's the NBC News coming up. They have a trademark for that. The smell of Play Doh, if it's, yeah, nobody else can create Play Doh with that same smell. Right? So that is a trademark. And they will enforce it if you try to do it. And if any of you have ever had kids and use trademark, that sticks in your brain for the rest of your life. Motion can be a trademark. The Columbia, the lady coming out, that was actually the first motion trademark that was registered. So apart from these like non-conventional ones, like the shape of something, the Hershey's Kisses, the goldfish, the texture. So there's a wine label that has a leather texture. They have a trade dress for that leather texture, and the look and feels. So many things that would tell your consumer that this particular good or this particular service comes from this source is a trademark, right? So remember, you wrote down those trademarks that you think could be trademarks. Do any of that fall into any of these categories? All right. Think about it. Like, you can have more than one trademark in a product. So if you look at the Play-Doh there, they probably have a trademark for the word Play-Doh. They have a trademark for the logo that's Play-Doh. They have a trademark for their scent, right? So all those can be trademark registrations that can be enforced. However, do you need to register your trademark to enforce it? No, you don't need to file a trademark application or registration. Unlike a patent, you don't need it, right? You don't need to go to the trademark office and register your trademark to claim that you have a trademark. You have a common law trademark the moment you start using your mark and rendering a service or selling a good. But those common law trademarks have limited protection. They are limited by geography, and it's really hard to enforce, right? So having a registered trademark gives you so many more benefits that we will talk about. And before we go there, there's two ways of getting a trademark registration. You can get a state registration, right? So one of the few places that a state registration actually works is in the cannabis industry, right? You cannot get a federal trademark for a lot of the cannabis stuff, but in the states that they're legal, you can. But you can get a federal trademark for almost everything else as long as you're using your trademark in interstate commerce, which has a really wide definition. So, yes, there's two ways of getting a trademark registration. Okay. So, what are the benefits? And I'm really talking here about a federal trademark registration, right? You go to the USPTO, you file your trademark application, get it examined, you get a trademark registration. Because a trademark is the goodwill of your company, this is one of the best ways to protect the goodwill of the company and to protect the quality of your goods and your services because your consumer associates your brand with your kind of quality. You get to list your mark, your brand, in the trademark registry, which then gives people notice that you are the owner of this brand, you have rights over this brand, and that they should not try and infringe it. It also prevents others from trying to register their brand with the trademark office. So it's like a blocker. Right? You get to use that R symbol. Without a trademark registration, you can use only the little TM. So you'll see some marks have a little TM on the top and some have the R circle. A TM just says you're claiming trademark rights in this. You don't have a registered trademark. It could be a trademark application is pending with the trademark office, you can be claiming a common law right. But the moment you get that certificate from the trademark office, you get to use the R on it. So, in addition to all these protections that a registration gives, you can also register your trademark with the Customs and Bureau Patrol. And what that does is they will check for anything that comes into the country and do your job for you of sort of monitoring counterfeit items that are coming in or gray market items and stop it at the border. Right. And it's not here, but one other thing is it gives your domain name protection as well. Let's say somebody took over your domain. If you have a trademark registration, that helps you get back your domain because you own it. And unlike copyrights or patents, trademarks will last forever as long as you keep paying that maintenance fee and using it, right? So it's an indefinite right. So, so what is the process of getting this trademark registration? First step, you have to decide what you want to trademark. You have to decide for what you want the trademark for what goods, for what services. Then you do a clearance search to make sure nobody else already has a trademark for what you're going to use it for. You file application with the trademark office, you get your application examined, you get your registration certificate, and then you just make sure you're monitoring the mark so that nobody else is using it. And if you pay your maintenance fee, and once you find someone infringing it, make sure you give them notice that they're infringing your trademark, which is the process. So, step one is deciding on that trademark. So, I'm going to go a little bit further here, right? So, choosing your trademark, which is the main thing. You want a trademark that is distinctive and unique. But when you're choosing the trademark, there is something called a spectrum of distinctiveness that lawyers use. It's a big term that basically means you have trademarks that are the weakest, starting from generic marks, and you have trademarks that are super strong, going on to the fanciful ones. So you really don't want a mark that is generic because everyone has a right to use that generic term to call a computer, an apple, right? One step up from the generic mark are descriptive marks. We get into suggestive marks, arbitrary marks, and fanciful marks are the strongest trademarks you can enforce. So I'll go through these. So the generic marks are the common terms you're going to use. Very little protection, almost no protection. You cannot get a trademark registration for it. But then you have descriptive marks. Marketing teams love using descriptive marks. It tells you something about your trademark. It tells you the characteristics of your trademark. It tells you the ingredients. It tells you something about the trademark. You can get trademark protection for descriptive marks. It's weak, but you still can get. If you're using your trademark at the time of application, you haven't really achieved secondary meaning in it, and it's still descriptive, you can register it in something called the supplemental register. But let's say you've been using a descriptive mark, like the Bank of America, for a long time, right? You have used it for more than 5 years. You can tell the trademark office, I've used it for more than 5 years. My consumers have come to recognize me as the source of this service. I need to be registered in the principal register. You haven't used it for 5 years, but there's another way of getting in the principal register. You have advertised extensively your consumers. You can do a survey to show your consumers recognize your mark as your service, and that is called acquired distinctiveness. So you can still get a registration for a descriptive mark. A suggestive mark tells you something about your trademark, but looking at it, you can't really say what the mark is. Like, so Bank of America will tell you it's a bank in America, whereas Airbus doesn't really tell you it's a plane, but it will tell you it has something to do with transport, it has something to do with air, right? So that is a suggestive mark. We get on to arbitrary and fanciful marks, which are going to be the strongest marks you can choose and which are going to be the easiest to enforce if somebody is infringing them. An arbitrary mark is a word that has some meaning, but it doesn't have anything to do with the product or the service, right? Apple has nothing to do with computers, except now when we hear Apple, we think of computers and phones, but it's just a fruit, right? It's not an ingredient in your thing. Same with Amazon. It's a jungle out there, but when now all we think of when we say Amazon is the package that will come delivered to your house. And then we have fanciful marks that are made up terms with no meaning, like Kodak or Adidas, right? So now look at your trademarks and figure out, is your trademark a generic, descriptive one? You want to probably try and make it a stronger trademark at this point, right? So trademarks don't just exist in a vacuum. You can't. I actually had someone come to me and tell me, I want to trademark my daughter's name. Nobody should be able to use it. It's not, you're not Blue Ivy. You don't have the money to trademark like how many classes. So you cannot just trademark your child's name and prevent others from using it. A trademark doesn't just stay in a vacuum. It has to be connected to a good or a service. So you have to either render a service or plan on rendering a service with it or sell some type of goods with it, right? So there's a connection between your customer and your mark. So there's a way of determining your goods and services. The trademark office lists goods and services into categories. And there's a manual that you plug in your goods and services to see which category it falls into and then decide which classes you want to file it. So trademark fees are determined by the number of classes you file for. Each class is a $350 fee, right? Once you have your goods, you have your mark, but you also want to know if somebody is already using your trademark. So a good place to start is just the internet. Plug in your mark in there, see if somebody already has it. If you think, oh, this is unique, but because sometimes you'll come up with, oh, this is such a cool brand, I don't think anybody is using it, and you'll be surprised somebody else already thought about that for the same goods and services. So plug it in, see if it's out there. If not, then you go to the USPTO, the Trademark Office website, and there is a button there that says search. Click on the button and it'll take you to this screen where you can do a general search, right? You plug in the name of your mark, plug in the words, and it'll give you all these other marks that have been applied for or registered that will prevent your mark from getting registered. But I would recommend doing something called a comprehensive search because trademarks are examined not on whether they are the exact brand, but if they are confusingly similar to another mark that is already there. So you may think, hey, I'm going to spell this with a different spelling, so it's now different. That does not work, right? A trademark examiner will look at your mark and also look at all the other marks that are in the system that are not an exact match, but that is confusingly similar to another mark, right? Your mark may be registered for one item. Let's say you want to register your mark for clothing. right? T-shirts. But somebody may have registered the same mark for perfumes. The trademark office is going to find clothing and perfumes related classes. So even if you're not in the same category of goods, you may still be considered a mark that is confusingly similar to a mark that has already been registered or applied for. Right? Your mark may be a famous mark or a mark that belongs to a very litigious group that is going to oppose your registration even after the trademark examiner says you can get your trademark. Right? But mostly it's good to do a very thorough clearance search before you spend money registering a mark because like Kaylin said, you can go on to start your branding process. You can bring your product to market, and then have somebody tell you you're infringing their trademark. Right? So it gets really expensive to change your brand later. So now you've chosen your mark, you've found your goods and services, you've done your clearance search, and it looks all clear. It's time to apply for your trademark. You don't have to be using your trademark, you don't have to be selling your goods and services to apply for a trademark registration. You can apply under a system called an intent to use, which you're telling the trademark office, hey, I plan on using this trademark for these goods and services. I still haven't started selling this, but I'll be doing it in the next 3 to 4 years or 5 years, right? So give me a priority date, go ahead, examine my trademark, tell me it's clear, and I will show you proof once I have started selling these goods or rendering these services. The second part is you are going to apply for your trademark. You are already selling your goods. You are already rendering your service. You can provide proof to the trademark office that you are doing it. So either way, you get a priority date. Right? So what do you need to apply for a trademark? So far, you have your mark, you have your goods and services. You've determined if you are going to be the owner of it, your company is going to be the owner of it. So you have the owner, right? If you have already started selling your goods or rendering your service, then you want the dates of first using your mark or using it in commerce. If you have started using your mark in commerce, then you need proof that you're using your mark in commerce, which is called a specimen. And then you need a declaration that you're going to sign and telling the trademark office, here's, I am using this mark in commerce, or I intend to use this mark in commerce. I am not consciously infringing another person's trademark. And then you pay the government fees of $350 per class. So, what is a specimen? If you talk to a lawyer, they're going to tell you, hey, make sure you send me my specimen before we file this. It's just a fancy legal term of proof for proof. It's basically if you have a good, you want to get a photograph of that good. Don't send your lawyer a digital image of your goods. And the trademark office is very picky about it. So now I tell people, if you're sending me a photograph, make it a really bad photograph that has stuff in the background so that people are they're not going to come back to me with, this is a digital image. Right? I don't want your best photograph. I just want a photograph with your mark on it, on the goods and services. If you're doing a service, then it can be a screenshot of your website. If you have a flyer, it's a flyer. If you advertise in the newspapers, it's a picture of that. Right? So it's proof for the trademark office to tell them, yes, here's my use of my trademark. This is the goods I'm using with, or these are the services I am rendering with them with. You apply for your trademark. It's a long process. You get your trademark application in, We're looking at about 1 year to get that registration certificate right now. You goes to a trademark examiner. I think the wait time now is about 8 months. It fluctuates. I didn't check the latest. If the examiner has no issues, they'll review it, publish it for 30 days for opposition. If you already have submitted your proof, you get a registration certificate. If there is an issue with the trademark, the examiner can find likelihood of confusion. They can find your mark to be descriptive. They can tell you your specimen is incorrect. Then it goes on to an office action. You file a response to the office action. And then it goes to the publication and opposition process. Feel free to take a picture of that. I'm going to sort of wrap up fast because it's already 12 o'clock. So once you get that registration certificate, it's not the end of everything. You can use an R to claim registration rights. You can register it with the Customs and Border Patrol. But the most important thing you're doing is remembering to file that 5th and 6th year maintenance fee after your registration date, and then file maintenance fees every 10th year, between the 9th and 10th year, right? Mark that on your calendars as soon as you get the registration certificate so you remember to do this. Monitor your trademark. You don't have to pay for a monitoring service. It's good if you can, but occasionally go on the internet, check if somebody is using your trademark to render similar services or goods. Send them a cease and desist letter. Remind them that they're infringing their goods. And there are so many other ways to prevent people from infringing. I'm not going to go into details right now. And that's it. I think we hit it at 12 o'clock. You are released for lunch, but if you have any questions, I'm ready to take any of them for you. Yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Using the same name,
Uh-huh.
but they changing. You mentioned the letter. They changing the spelling. The spelling is different. Like let's say Amazon with one N,
Uh-huh.
and another one using Amazon with a second N at the
Okay.
end. So how can they resolve the concern between them?
So they want to try and both use it at the same time?
Yeah. So one of them claiming he has been in business longer, one of them claiming it's his right to it. So how can one person win over the other one?
So one of them can get a federal registration if it's exactly the same. You still can't get a consent agreement for another second federal registration. But you all can come up with an agreement where the other person still has rights to use it within that state that they're using it. If it's the exact same mark, even a consent agreement won't let you get two different federal registrations. You might consider state registrations at that point.
Okay. Thank you.
During the copyright presentation,
Uh-huh.
he mentioned that there could be a chance where you could copyright and trademark a logo. What is that instance? Like where or when would that fall into place?
Okay, so let's say your logo has a really artistic, creative element to it. There's some artwork that you include. So I once registered a trademark for a logo that included somebody's mother's photograph in it. He was really upset that somebody might steal his mother's photograph. But that photograph is a copyright item. So he had a copyright in the photograph, but the logo itself was a trademark. Does that make sense?
So you would have to do both. To
He
copyright
would have had to do
the
both.
photo and then trademark the logo.
Yes.
Okay.
What if you have the domain for a website and then there's another company? So, like, say I have Brittany.com
Mm-hmm.
and I purchased that 3 years ago, and then 1 year ago, there's another company that goes and buys mybritney.com. But then I just go by Britney and they go by my Britney. So but then they market with on their website just Britney, but they don't own the domain, but they filed a trademark.
So the domain name rights and your trademark rights are two different things. Your domain name does not have to match your trademark,
Okay.
right? Your trademark is what's there on the banner of your thing. What a trademark does is, let's say you have a trademark for Britney, right? And somebody went and got a domain for Britney.com before you did. They had no bona fide intention of using it. The whole idea was to squat and then make you pay more money to get that domain from them. Your trademark now can help you get that domain back.
What if I already have the domain, but they don't have the domain, but they're using our name?
Are they using your name for the same goods and services?
It's the same industry, but it's a different service.
Do So they are using, is your brand Britney?
No, I was just using that as an example. So there's like a doctor that's marketing like telehealth services, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And we're
Do you, so that'll be like, so first you have to decide, do you have a trademark that you can enforce, right? And then did they come in after you? Are they infringing your trademark? Don't worry about the domain part of it, right?
okay.
And then you come up with, okay, if they are infringing your trademark, then what's your next step, right? Are they trying to get, is there confusion? Is your customer going to their website instead of your website because they're looking for your brand?
Right.
And that's where you'd come up with a cease and desist letter and speak to a attorney and see if you can make them stop using your brand.
Okay. And then when you're filing the trademark, is it best to have the logo with your slogan in it when you submit it, or a separate logo and then your slogan
so
separately?
I wanted to actually talk about this. I would always recommend people file your word mark first. Logos change. Your marketing team is going to come in and tell you to change your logo at some point. So file your word mark first,
Okay.
file your brand name first, and then file your logo and file your tagline separately.
Okay.
Try not to put them all together.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Our logo. Some other companies or people doing that. And then you find them, they pop up on Instagram or they make a Facebook page or whatever, and or a Shopify account. And it's always so hard to get them to remove it. I have registered trademarks.
Okay.
And American companies, they should be honoring that easily. If you have the registered trademark, they shouldn't allow somebody to be an imposter of your business. Is there some case law
Yeah.
that's been settled on this?
I know we are running out on time, so I will talk to you later. But most social media platforms have a place where you can email and send them your trademark registration and let them know somebody is infringing your trademark on their platform. All right? So talk to me later and I'll talk you through most of this. Do we have time for another question?
Excellent.
Yeah.
So we own all rights to a particular domain. We own rights to a particular domain, every one of those extensions to that domain, and we actually started using a brand, and another company then uses the same brand, and they filed for a trademark, but they filed prior to, or rather filed after our use of that mark. What do we do in that instance?
Process you have to go through wait till the mark is published, you can oppose it and prove that you use it. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. There is a process to prevent someone from getting a trademark registration if you have priority use on the trademark. And you would go through a process called opposition. Does that answer your question? Sort of? Yeah.
Okay, so then,
Or if they already got the registration.
yeah, their registration is rather than they applied for it. So it's pending
Yeah.
and it got rejected.
Oh, they got rejected?
Yeah.
It was rejected. I guess their mark wasn't clear, so their attorney had to resubmit it.
Okay. Let's talk about that after this. I don't want to keep everyone waiting, but come talk to us. Okay, cool.